Hello everyone, I'm fixitfixitfixit, and I'm starting a series called How to Podcast. In this series, I'm going to actually explain the do's and don'ts of podcasting and recommend software, hardware, and explain them in a little bit more detail and give you the options of what you should be doing and what you could be doing to produce a better product. One of the things I'm going to do in this episode is I'm going to talk about the methodologies of podcasting a bit more, so you actually understand what it is and how to go about doing it. This might be the first time you're doing a podcast, or you might be looking to improve your current podcast. Because of this, I've made up a short list of things you need to ask yourself, and I'll ask them in order. I suggest you write this down on a piece of paper because you're going to need to reference this later. The first question is, what's the subject matter of your podcast? What genre does it fall into? Is it a technology podcast? Is it a gaming podcast? Is it comedy? General entertainment? What is your podcast about? You need to write this down. This is going to help your podcast as it'll help you stay on topic more with your audience. The next question is, how long do you want your episodes to be? Typically, most podcast episodes are around 1 hour in length, but I have seen episodes that are 30 minutes and some that are 2 hours. So figure out how long do you actually want an episode to be. The next question, how often do you want to release an episode? Do you want to do a daily podcast, a weekly podcast, or maybe even a monthly podcast? And now for a very important question that relates to the first three questions. Do you have enough content to fill in the podcasts? What I mean is, if you plan on releasing a monthly podcast, you're more than likely going to have enough content every single month through the course of the month to fill out an episode. If you plan on releasing a weekly podcast, is there enough content over the course of that week that happens in life or your subject that you can produce an episode? And same goes for daily. Is there enough happening every single day that you can pump out an episode on a daily basis? This is very important in deciding your release schedule. If you can't get enough content for a daily podcast, then a weekly may be better. If you can't get enough content for a weekly, then a monthly may be better. With the majority of the thought experiment questions out of the way, let's move on to more technical questions. You're going to want to write these down as well because this will help you decide what kind of hardware or software you need to be using for your podcast. So to start this off, the first question in this list is the podcast going to be a video podcast as well, or just an audio podcast? If it's going to be video, you're going to need a camera. If it's going to be just audio, then the microphones and the hardware relating to that is all you need. Next, is the podcast going to be pre-recorded, or are you going to do a live stream podcast and then subsequently take the live stream and release a separate file of the completed podcast? Now, how many people are going to be involved in the podcast? Is it just going to be you in front of a microphone speaking your mind? Or is it going to be you and a close personal friend regularly doing a podcast? Or maybe you and a rotating guest? You need to figure this one out. This is very important for hardware reasons. Are you going to need one mic? Or you need two mics? Or you need a mixing board? Or you going to need a complicated software arrangement? You need to know this. Now, going along with that same question, do you plan on having guests? So even if you have someone else, do you plan on having a third person? Or perhaps someone remotely via Skype or a live caller? All of these things matter. Even if you're not doing it now, you need to know, do you plan on it? Is this something you would definitely like to do? Because once you go down the road of purchasing hardware or software, you're kind of pigeonholing yourself into an area or a product. So you want to start doing your purchases and setting stuff up with the eventual plan of getting to that point, rather than just buying whatever's available and then figuring out that all of that is garbage and you got to throw it away and buy new stuff. This is to save money and save yourself a lot of headaches. Now, once you've figured all of these things out, now you're on your last step, or one of the last steps. You have to come up with a name. You need a name for yourself. What are you going to call yourself? You're going to call yourself like Nick in the Fantastic World of Marbles, whatever it is. You need a name. And when you start to get close to a name, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to see, is that name available on iTunes for the podcast directory? Is that name available on Facebook pages, on Twitter, on YouTube, on Ustream? See if that name is available overall, because what you're building is not so much a page, you're building a brand that encompasses many sites. Getting your brand set up properly from the beginning is one of the most important things you can do. Because once it's done, you're good. But if you don't do it and you have to try to do it later, it's terrible. It's hard. You're going to have things that don't match. When you're going to have your Twitter being Mike Thomas, and then your Facebook being Michael Thomas 2, and then your YouTube being Mike Thomas. Yeah, I'm making an example, but you get my point. You don't have uniformity, and you want uniformity in a brand. So take your time, find a name, and see if it's available all across the board. And once you find something that you're happy with, that you're like, yes, that's the name, that's what I want, you need to start claiming it. Go to YouTube, go to everywhere. Capture that name across the entirety of the internet. Anything you think you might touch, take the name, get it, so no one else does. Now, once you have all that done, you have your checklist done, you have a plan of action done, you have your name, your brand, it's captured, then you can actually start looking at hardware. What are you going to buy? What software are you going to use? Which we're going to cover in another video. Probably the next video, I'll start going down the hardware software path. But this video is to kind of get you into the groove, so you attack podcasting the way it should be attacked, in a very professional, structured, and systematic manner. Now, hopefully this video has helped you at least a little bit. Hopefully. If you like what you see and you want more, including the podcast videos, do me a favor. Like, comment, and subscribe. I'm Fixit, and this has been the prequel video to my How to Podcast videos series that I'm starting. All right, thank you guys. Have a good one, and let's podcast. All right, later.